Hey everyone, just a reminder that I'll be showing Pulgasari in 3D on July 31st at the Guild Cinema in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ticketing and other information can be found at guildcinema.com. And because this is a movie that is very near and dear to my heart, I'm also putting out a little limited edition zine program pamphlet thing to go along with it. So if you're interested in that, you can purchase one of those along with your ticket. Yeah, hope to see you there and enjoy the show. Let's talk about Wicker, shall we?
Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dead Formats, a movie podcast that carries dead formats out of the village. I'm your host, Chris, and this episode we're going to be discussing The Quicker Man and The Wicker Tree from 2011. This week we are joined by two very special guests, a couple of willing king-like virgin fools who've both been getting drunk at their own bars. Dan, Triv, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Welcome,
I was promised mead.
I was promised at least one fish costume or a fool costume, and neither have been provided, so this will be my last appearance, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It got trapped in customs. I swear I sent it.
I'm not paying the import fees again. We've been through this.
The fish head might have fallen out of the box by the time it gets to you, but...
I just want to go 7 rounds with an Italian-Scottish sheriff wearing a horse head.
Or Gazissimo.
Yeah.
So Dan and Triv are both YouTubers from TYTD Reviews and Trivial Theater, respectively. They were most recently featured on this show when we discussed Swedish Dead Formats Fata Morgana and The Werewolf Cult Chronicles Vietnam 1969.
Those were the good chronicles. You know, they don't do chronicles like that anymore.
Yeah.
No.
So our dead formats this week are a fan edit and a legacy sequel that most people don't seem to know exists. And they are both related to the classic British horror film 1973's The Wicker Man. So let's talk about our histories with The Wicker Man, and let's start out with Triv, because I assume yours will probably be much shorter than Dan's, because The Wicker Man is the best horror movie ever made, according to Dan, at least. So Triv,
oh, yeah.
The Wicker Man.
Oh, the people that watch this, and you guys are probably going to want to slap your heads and go, oh, God, Triv, what the hell's wrong with you? My first introduction to The Wicker Man was the 2006 version.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I don't know how to feel about that legacy, but yeah, I stumbled across it back when there was video stores, and it looked interesting, and it's like, oh my God, what the hell? And then you do more research and you find out that there is a much better version starring a much better cast, but not quite as campy, funny, weird as the 2006 version. But absolutely fell in love with the 70s Wicker Man. Christopher Lee is above reproach. Everything that goes on, and just comparing the two is such it's for someone that at that point wasn't used to going back and forth between sequels and originals. It was kind of mind exploding. It took me a while. I had to go into therapy to understand it. I actually built my own Wicker Man costume so I could really get inside the head of Nicolas Cage versus the gent from
Edward Woodward.
Edward Wood. Yeah, exactly. And then you throw Wicker Tree in there, which is, I think this is like the 3rd or 4th time that I've seen it, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Hey, we got a hardcore Wicker Tree fan here, guys. Back off.
Trying to it's one of those things where you go and you try and understand, because it was made by Robin Hardy, so there's that. Okay, what was it that made him want to do this? You know, where did this all come from? You know, you try to get in the mind and understand what made it good, you know, because that's, as kind of good, bad movie YouTubers, you know, you want to try and see the good in this stuff, and I'm still on the fence.
There's a very straightforward answer as to why the Wicker Tree ended up the way the Wicker Tree ended up, but we'll probably get into that a little bit later on.
Absolutely. Hardcore fish costumes is not the answer.
Right. So how about you, Dan? What about your history with the Wicker Man?
So to my shame, I should say, I had been told to watch The Wicker Man for probably about 10 years before I actually watched The Wicker Man. All of my friends around me who were also sort of big on horror, big on cult cinema, some people who actually grew up when the film was initially released and went to watch it when it was there, were like, I've hung out with Dan long enough to know that he will really dig The Wicker Man. He needs to watch The Wicker Man. And I was always like, well, if enough people tell me I should definitely watch something, I'm not entirely sure if I should. I think it's probably a sign that they think they know what's best for me. And ever the contrarian, I sort of brushed them off. But eventually, I sort of settled down and went, you know what, I will watch it. So I popped on the theatrical cut, and about 90 minutes later, I was pounding the floor with my fist, cursing myself for having that kind of stubborn mentality. I should have got to it sooner. In the years that have followed, I own The Wicker Man on every format that it's ever been released on, including its original pre-cert VHS release. I've seen it in the cinema 2 or 3 times. I've seen it as part of a Q&A. One of my friends and I went to a screening of it in Manchester where they did Smell-O-Vision Wicker Man, which was particularly enthralling.
Wow.
They pumped in like the smell of smoke when the Wicker Man was burning and the smell of the sort of the sweet shop when they go into there. It was a very nice experience, all things considered.
The smell of damned apples.
Yes. Yeah. I simply put, I love it, and I think it is probably the greatest horror film ever created, in my opinion. The various cuts that have come out are all just different flavours of the same love for me. I watch it.
Well, we'll see about that.
We watch it at least once a year around these parts, and usually I'll invite a couple of friends over and we'll have a little sing-along, and it'll be nice. I've got the vinyl soundtrack as well, so if I want to terrify my neighbours because we live in the sticks where I am at the minute, I can just put that on and they start getting the fear, or either that or they start building a giant wicker model of me next door. So It's great. It's great. I absolutely love the film, inside and out.
Yeah, so I've only seen The Wicker Man a handful of times, really. I think I got the special edition DVD in the early 2000s, like when the director's cut came out, because that was kind of a big deal on message boards and everyone talking about The Wicker Man. I watched it. I really don't remember thinking much of it, to be honest. I was probably below the age of 15 at the time and really getting deep into horror, but my tastes were much more slashery and effects heavy, and really my tastes are still that way. But I think I watched this movie and was just really underwhelmed and probably wouldn't have even considered it a horror movie because I was just too young and too American to really appreciate any of it. I've seen it since a few times within the past decade or so. I'm definitely more appreciative of it now than when I was younger. Is it one of my favorites? No, but I do think it is a great film. I also think that seeing it at such a young age has sort of ruined the entire subgenre of horror movies about cults, because for me, this is something I've brought up before on the show, they almost uniformly copy the broad strokes of the plot of The Wicker Man. So they really feel very rote to me in a way that I find bothersome, because they're all built around some type of reveal. And if you know that from the very beginning, the rest of the film kind of feels pointless to an extent. And that kind of may figure into when we talk about the Wicker Tree, but yeah, I mean, we're not really here to talk about the Wicker Man. It's just important to have that context. We're here to talk about the Quicker Man and the Wicker Tree. So the Quicker Man is a fan edit that I did myself over a year ago. Completed February 2025, if the last modified date on the file is to be believed. And this all started because I guess around that time, I was listening to a podcast on Spotify. It ended, and randomly the next thing that it decided to serve up to me was Dan's appearance on The Best Little Horror House in Philly.
Nice.
Which was weird because I had definitely already listened to that when it came out in 2021. But in that episode, you mentioned a triple feature version of The Wicker Man that piqued my interest. So tell us a little bit about that, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. So this stems back to a interview that was given by a famous film critic in the UK called Mark Kermode.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether this is a 100% true fact or whether it's just him creating a kind of paper towns thing to catch people out who don't do their research properly, I don't know, and he's never owned up to whether it is or not, so who can say. But he was doing a documentary on the Wicker Man. I think it's called Burnt Offerings, the history of the Wicker Man or something like that. And as part of his research, he claims that he was able to access multiple different cuts of The Wicker Man that were distributed to various theatres and drive-ins across the US around the time of its release. And he said that essentially one of the prints that he saw was cycled around various drive-in movie theatres at the time, and it was an 18-ish minute cut that basically just cut out everything about the Wicker Man apart from the key plot beats, and it was to be sandwiched between two slightly longer B-movie films as part of a triple bill. And when he was asked, well, what was in that 18-minute cut, he said, well, basically, the plot of the film in the 18-minute cut is Sergeant Howie flies down to Summer Isle, gets out of his plane, asks the villagers about Rowan Morrison and whether they'd seen her or not. He wanders around the village a little bit more, wanders down to the beach, finds Rowan on the beach, they escape into the caves, up onto a hillside where they meet the other villagers who promptly take him into the Wicker Man and burn him, and that's the end.
That's a wham bam thank you ma'am right there.
Yeah.
Which I thought was fantastic. Now again, whether this is true or not, I do not know. I personally like to believe it. I like to believe that some backwater drive-in in 1976 got a full cut version of the Wicker Man and just went, what is this crap? Just cut it down so people can use the bathroom in between. Don't look now and, I don't know, critters or so. We can know.
That would be
so
awesome.
That would be.
I mean, I had a friend who I was talking about coming onto this podcast the other night to it, and I was basically like, why would they even do that to the Wicker Man? And I was like, well, people need to piss. So, of course, they'll put something on that just kills 15 minutes so people can go buy a glizzy and take a dump.
Why didn't they do that to Avatar or like the Avengers movies?
Well, this then prompted a further conversation with this guy who I was talking to where we started shortening films. So it was just like, what about Carrie? It's just the shower scene and then John Travolta blowing up for 12 minutes. Titanic. Oh, let's get on the boat. Hard cut to the iceberg. Done. You know, I think a lot of films would be significantly improved if there was an 18-minute version of them.
Yeah, so I heard you talking about that, and at that point, that podcast episode was 4 years old, so I was like, oh, maybe this version is now out there somewhere. So I did a little bit of research. It's not. I did just find a short video of Mark Kermode, which is now 12 years old.
Mm.
He says basically what you did and gives a very brief description. And I was like, okay, well, so this is not out there yet? Like, that kind of makes me think it's not real, because if he was aware of this at least 12 years ago, you would think that it would have been put out as a special feature at some point. But I just thought to myself, okay, well, why not take a crack at recreating this cut? And so that's what I did with The Wicker Man. And like I said, I completed this over a year ago. And to paraphrase a saying, edits are never complete. They're just abandoned. Because coming back to it after all of this time, there are a couple of wrinkles here and there that I could probably smooth out and that I knew existed when I put this down on the shelf, but it's just, I haven't the time. You know, at a certain point, you have to stop yourself, especially for like a fan edit that was based on a terrible idea to begin with.
You can only George Lucas it so much.
Yes,
See,
it was actually Robin Hardy always intended to have dewbacks walking around the Wicker Man.
I mean, on that particular island, they did exist. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Hunted to extinction. They were absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just start talking about this. It should be pretty brief since it's only a 17.5-minute film that we've already seen.
I have talked for longer on less, I guarantee you.
Yeah. I preserved the opening title sequence. This is one of those things that I would have cut out to put more plot in, but I just wasn't sure about the historical accuracy of that because I don't think I've ever seen a triple feature version of a film that has been cut so significantly. So I could kind of see it going either way. You know, I could see that possibly there would be like legal requirements to keep those in, but I could also see a distributor not really giving a shit and just cutting it out to like get the juicy stuff in there.
Yeah, I could see it. It's like I say, going into this, I knew that obviously you would be the person who had edited this together, but my mentality on it was, okay, some intern who's working in a hot, sweaty drive-in with no AC and no fans has been asked to chop this 1.5 hour long, bizarre movie about cults and virgins into an 18-minute thing that can be played in between two 45 to 60-minute films. How arsed is he going to be about accuracy of chopping this? And that was the mentality I went in to this, because I was also in the mindset of a popular thing around the time that this triple bill feature would have been edited was distribution of 8mm extracts from films, where you could get like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it would be a couple of reels of 8mm film that would literally just silently show highlights of that movie. Or, you know, I think that Ed Wood had a few of his films done that way, where before VHS, if you wanted to watch the film, you could only buy highlights on a reel. So I was genuinely, this is a compliment to you on this one. When I watched it, I thought it was actually surprisingly well cut together.
Well, thank you.
Given that the mentality I was coming in with. Yeah. It was. I was sitting there thinking, right, is this just going to be thrown together because the guy who would have cut this probably just needed to get off work and only had like 5 minutes? But you actually really put a nice touch in trying to keep as much information as possible whilst binning off so much.
Yes, so much.
I thought some of the transitions were really nice in it. I liked how you transitioned the intro music and sort of wound it down as he was landing onto the water. I thought that was a nice touch.
So that probably is the biggest deviation from like the actual versions of of this film. And it's sort of a great example of some of the challenges I faced in cutting this. So, you know, during the opening credits in the original, we get a rendition of Robert Burns's The Highland Widow's Lament that was recorded specifically for The Wicker Man. And the problem with that is that because of sort of the chaotic circumstances of the production of The Wicker Man, is that the original elements are lost. So even on the soundtrack for the film, all of the sound effects that are played in the film, like, you know, geese or propellers or water, are still present in the song that plays in the theatrical version. So you can't really cut around that. You'd have to either leave it in there exactly how it is, or do what I did and use a different version of the song, which was by the Corys from their 1968 album, Kishmool's Galley. So yeah, that was the things that stick out most to me when I watch this after having done it a year ago, are these sorts of sound decisions that had to be made just to deal with not having access to the original elements.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I say, I think you handled those covers quite well. I liked the fact that you were able to include the key characters from the story throughout. So, for example, having the little section with Britt Eklund, so that, you know, we sort of establish who she is. And my favourite part, and I don't know whether this was intentional or not, but I'm going to assume it was intentional, leaving Christopher Lee's appearances out until the very end of the film, which was something that British Lion, when they were actually cutting the original Wicker Man, were quite enthusiastic about. They thought that Christopher Lee's monologues and all of his appearances throughout the film were too long. So they were quite happy to chop as much Christopher Lee out as possible. So they would have been absolutely riveted at the idea of Christopher Lee not turning up until the last 5 minutes.
Well, you just, if you're trying, with the constraint of this being 17 minutes, you just can't leave that stuff in, because I would have liked to, because I love Christopher Lee, but at the very end of the movie, he does do just an abbreviated version explaining the plot. So we don't really need to know that like he's the second Lord Summerisle and that his father or grandfather, whoever was, like moved here for all this and that, because he gives us the broad strokes at the end.
Oh yeah, and on that note, I think that was the thing that made me laugh the most about this cut, is that the majority of it is just how we kind of wandering around and interacting with people, and it is just kind of a police drama. And then suddenly, completely out of left field in the last 5 minutes, it's like, oh yes, and we are an island of prosperous fruit and vegetables, but they all withered, and your sacrifice will bring it. It felt so much like a kind of 60s low budget B movie where the majority of the film is just characters kind of talking to each other about nothing important really, and then the last 5 minutes the entire film's plot is just kind of dropped in and then quickly gotten rid of because they didn't have the budget to actually act on the plot they're putting in place. It reminded me of things like Rocket Attack USA or I don't know, some of the earlier Ed Wood movies like Jailbait, where the vast majority of it is just like an espionage film or a gangster movie, and then in the last 5 minutes they go, oh yeah, nuclear war is happening now, goodbye. And that's it, the film just ends.
Poochie went back to his home planet.
Basically.
The monster was never real.
Yeah, so... go ahead, Triv.
I was just going to add, I did a lot of... in my previous life as an editor, I did a lot of that stuff where you had 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and you had to be precise down to the frame to be able to get that message across. And you talk to these businesses that deal with these massive notions of everything that they carry and trying to get that down to something that's manageable that people are going to pay attention to with the short attention spans that we have. And it is about that, okay, what are the key points? And that's the sign of a great editor, which obviously I'm preaching to the choir here when it comes to that. But, and I guess further on Dan's point, you think about a lot of like the low budget horror, the background stuff doesn't really play in. Like a good horror movie can hit you where you live, and get those points across. And not to say that everything else that happens through the movie is fluff, but if you need to, like, this is a good enough movie where the pieces stand on their own and you can tell the story in a 17-minute format like this.
Yeah, so that was kind of like, since I, as a film viewer, tend to just be very plot obsessed, sometimes to my own detriment, that was kind of like my goal, is that I wanted to have this be 17 minutes, but make like literal narrative sense. So I feel like I more or less did that, but you could also do something completely different, because when it comes to The Wicker Man, the plot is maybe not necessarily what people enjoy about it. In order to have it make narrative sense, you have to excise basically everything that makes this movie good. Like, I was able to leave a little corn rigs in there, but there's so much music in this film that a lot of people will have that opinion of like, oh, it's secretly a musical. I had to cut all that out because it's not propelling the plot forward.
Part of me loves the idea, if this did actually play as a triple feature bill in some drive-in somewhere, that this was the first exposure that somebody had to The Wicker Man, and that for years they were like, that film was terrible, it was just a guy wandering around for ages and then he got burnt, and then they find out, oh yeah, there was like an hour and 15 minutes that they just never experienced.
So basically, how he gets to Summerisle, he talks to the harbor master about Mae Morrison, who's missing. Rowan Morrison, and they're like, oh yeah, her Mae Morrison works at the post office, but she doesn't have a daughter named Rowan. He goes to talk to Mae Morrison. She's like, no. He goes outside and gets directions from Britt Eklund, who, yes, as you said, Dan, has a brief appearance in this, but is basically just a random woman on the street in this version. Goes to the schoolhouse. Everyone's like, no, she's not dead. We don't believe in people being dead. He goes to the library and crams on pagan rituals. And so also in this, I can't remember the exact reasons why I had to do this. It was just for reasons of continuity, but all of the scenes take place during the day. So it seems to suggest I think the original, he's there for like 1 to 3 days, maybe. Mm-hmm. In this version, he's probably there for less than 8 hours, because the sun is up already when he arrives and it's setting at the very end. So
Well, the thing is, in this cut, he's basically decided to speedrun the Wicker Man. So he already knows what's going to happen. So he's just got to, do all the glitchless bordering through the walls. And, there's a bit where if you wait in the corner for 10 seconds, you can do a backward somersault through to the Wicker Man level. And it's great. It's great.
The Wicker Man any percent.
yeah, basically. He was using TAS. That was the one.
Yeah. So he, knocks out the tavern owner and takes his costume, goes on the May Day procession. I did have to keep in, a lot of Christopher Lee got cut out, but I was able to preserve some of his more iconic lines. Cut some capers, man. Use your bladder. You've been getting drunk at your own bar.
Play the fool. It's what you're paid for.
Yeah. And he sees Rowan at the beach, rescues her, enters a cave, and immediately exits the cave. And we get another classic Lee line. Did I do it right? You did it beautifully.
Beautifully. Oh, I love him in this film. I can see why he loved being in this film, honestly. But, yeah. Oh, fantastic.
He's great. And so this, the ritual starts. Howie finds that this was the plan all along. Crops failed last year. Trying to appease the sun god. This and that. Just think about what you're doing. Smash cut to Christopher Lee and the Islanders singing Summer is a-Comin'. This is probably my favorite edit in this version because the transition between the two is so abrupt and it just cuts to Christopher Lee swaying and smiling and singing. It comes off as very funny to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Same. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I will say this cut of the film I actually prefer to the director's cut. So,
wow.
High praise.
You can take that. That's yours. Because the thing is, right, this cuts a lot of stuff out, but it's entertaining, and that's what appeals to me. The director's cut has everything that you could possibly want to see on the Wicker Man. Anything that wasn't buried under the M6. And it drags. It's so slow in places because of the fact that there's just so much there. I know that there are purists out there who'll be like, oh, the most complete Wicker Man is the best Wicker Man. I'm not one of those people. I do feel like some of the cuts that they made to the film elements were the right choices because it worked in the script and not in the film.
Yeah.
To that end, I find this 18-minute cut wonderfully digestible. It's a nice treat of a film. You can pop it on, and if you've already seen the theatrical cut or the final cut of The Wicker Man, I genuinely think you will find it entertaining and quite engaging for just how quick you can get through it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Perfect
for bumping up those letterbox numbers if you want to get some rewatches in. Just watch that 4 times. And
it's a nice and loose boosh.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm also a theatrical cut guy with The Wicker Man. I've seen theatrical directors and final cut, which I think is also called the intermediate cut or something. So yeah, I think I probably was just an editor in another life because if anything gets above 90 minutes, it becomes like a chore,
Yeah.
Not that movies above 90 minutes are bad, but if I'm scrolling through Plex or Tubi or whatever, that will often be a deciding factor on whether or not I watch something. Is it an hour and 45 minutes? Too long.
Yeah.
If you are below that 90-minute mark, that's a sweet spot for me. And I feel like a lot of my favorite films are sub 90 minutes because I think, sometimes you do need that extra length if there's a complex plot going on. But in general, I think there's something to be said for the economy of being able to clearly present an idea in less than 90 minutes and have it be entertaining.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think the only exception I would have to that is if the film comes with pedigree. So if there is, this film is 2 hours, 15 minutes long, but it's directed by David Lynch or directed by Stanley Kubrick or it's widely considered to be the greatest cult film ever made, then I might sort of hang on it a bit and go, okay, yeah, we'll give this a go. But broadly speaking, and I think it's just a problem with the times we live in as well. If a film is over 90 minutes long and it's clearly clearing an hour and 3/4 or anything like that, I don't have the time in the day these days to sit and actually get through that. I have to break it in 2. And I don't like that as a cinematic experience, because then I have to try and remember everything that's gone on. And, writing up the letterboxd review for anything that's 2 hours long can easily add another hour onto the proceedings, because you have to kind of break it all down again. And yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think sub 90 minutes shows restraint as a filmmaker. It gives you a borderline to work with within the framework of your story. I feel if you can't convey the story you want to tell in around 90 minutes, then you're not telling the story in a way that is digestible to the audience, in my opinion, at least.
For sure. So Howie's up in the Wicker Man effigy being burnt alive. Camera zooms in on the setting sun, and we get the iconic line, "Oh Lord, oh Jesus Christ." That was another thing that kind of made me bristle a little bit. But again, the line is spoken while the Islanders are singing and while there are very loud fire sound effects going on. So it was really kind of impossible to preserve it as it appears in the film. So I wish I could have had that, but I was like, I'll put it in there somehow. So we don't get to see him say it, but we get to hear him say it. And that's how it ends. That's a brisk 17 minutes and 49 seconds. So what do you guys think overall on The Quicker Man?
Clever in name, clever in concept. Overall, very well done.
I hated it. I shall only watch it 23 more times.
Awesome. Really, I just had you guys watch it as an excuse to finally do something with this edit that I made a year ago, but also in case you wanted to rewatch The Wicker Man but didn't have time to prepare for The Wicker Tree, you just watch this 17-minute version and get, the highlights.
Honestly, I really do think that films should consider a bite-sized alternative, in case of emergency break glass situation. Like, can you imagine if, I don't know, the Halloween series had a special feature on every disc that showed the last film but condensed to 18 minutes long so you could just get the key beats?
It's funny you bring that up because that's something I've thought about doing with Friday the 13th in particular, because I can't remember when they stopped doing it. We'll just say they stopped doing it in Jason Takes Manhattan. But every sequel of Friday the 13th, the first 5 minutes of it are the last 5 minutes of the movie before it. So I've often thought of taking all of those 5-minute chunks, editing them together, and just having that bring you up to speed for Jason Takes Manhattan, and just having an extra 30 minutes in front of it and be like, oh, cool. That's what has happened thus far in the Friday the 13th saga. Now I don't have to watch those 7 other movies. I think that would be a funny little project to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it would work. I mean, that's one of the parts that I do quite love about it. I also like it when they show the last 5 minutes, but they've clearly refilmed it because they want to change one small element to make... one of my favourite ones for that is Halloween 5. I hate Halloween 5 as a film. It's one of the worst Halloween entries in my opinion. But they slightly tweak the end of Halloween 4. They refilm it slightly so that they can make Michael survive. Whereas in Halloween 4, it's a clear death. He isn't getting back from it. Which was great because then we got the Michael Hermit relationship we didn't know we needed. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. I really do think having these kind of condensed, bring you up to speed style. I mean, The Evil Dead would be a fantastic example of one where that would be something that's desperately needed, because we've got a new film coming out next month. They're doing another film in the next year or two that's coming out. And there are people out there who haven't seen them, or have maybe only watched the 2013 Evil Dead and Evil Dead Rise, or maybe only watched Evil Dead Rise. I think you could really condense the TV show and all the movies down to a quick catch-up, this is what you've missed, right now let's get on with the movie type format.
I think we've just reinvented Quibi.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's a modern audience. People have when you're talking TikToks, people have a 5-second attention span. Why not do an 18-second or an 18-minute version of a movie? That way, if it interests them, they do the amuse-bouche. They're I like this. Let's go hardcore.
From what I hear, people actually do watch full movies on TikTok, just broken into 5-minute segments.
I would not be surprised. I mean, they did it on YouTube as well, so...
I don't know if you can hear that off in the distance, but that faint scratching sound is David Lynch trying to dig out of his grave to come and shout at us. You want to watch it on what? You want to cut it down to what?
What about Christopher Nolan with Tenet? Like, oh, you have to see it in theaters. You don't want to see it on a phone.
Yeah. I don't want to see it and still haven't. No. So I think that's a happy middle ground between me and Mr. Nolan.
There you go.
See? Putting the world to rights.
So with that, so The Wicker Tree, how familiar were the both of you with this film?
Well, I mean, I watched it 3 or 4 times just randomly. Well, I'd watch a version of The Wicker Man, and then I would watch this to remind me of why I go back and watch, the 70s Wicker Man. Mm-hmm. And the more I watch it, the more I'm like, okay, this is just Midsummer, done not as good and without a guy in a bear costume.
But as I was saying earlier, Midsummer is just The Wicker Man.
That is true.
Because all cult horror movies are the same plot as The Wicker Man.
So on my end, The Wicker Tree was... What's the best way to describe this? Having got into The Wicker Man and then embracing that film and getting on board with all of my friends who were even more hardcore Wicker Man fans than I was at the time, when the subject of The Wicker Tree was raised, there was kind of a nervous shuffling in seats. And I found it quite bizarre that the vast majority of the people who were really championing The Wicker Man had not seen The Wicker Tree, could not recommend The Wicker Tree, or if they had seen it, were kind of in hushed tones being like, yeah, it's not as good as The Wicker Man. Mm-hmm. So I just broadly was like, well, you know what? I really like The Wicker Man. I don't need to see a sequel that is not as good as The Wicker Man. If I'm quite happy to kind of, if it finds me, then fine. But I'm quite happy to go through my life having not seen this film because I enjoy The Wicker Man as much as I do. It would be a lesser product. And then, obviously, you contacted me and said, hey, do you want to do The Wicker Tree? And it was a bit like a beacon had been lit. It was like, right, wow. Okay, well, that jar's been smashed. It has found me, finally.
It's actually been watching you for, the past 12 or 13 years.
This was it. So, I basically had no interest in really checking it out. I was kind of at peace with it, that it was just this film that people nervously talked about in kind of gritted teeth tones, and for the purpose of this podcast, I was summoned to check it out, and I thought, you know what, yeah, I'll take that chance. I'll see what it's about. And boy howdy, I can tell you now, it was a movie.
Yeah. So I also had not seen this before. It's just it's something I'd been aware of for a long time, and I just wanted to have an excuse to watch it and talk about it because it's intriguing. This sequel to one of the greatest horror films of all time that nobody ever talks about, really positively or negatively. People just don't talk about it because they haven't seen it. And I think maybe there's a lot of that is because The Wicker Man is considered to be such a masterpiece, I think people assume that Robin Hardy was some sort of cinematic genius that never really got his fair crack. And they don't want to sully that reputation and have to confront the fact that maybe he wasn't the genius they thought he was by watching The Wicker Tree. I don't know.
So I did look into it a little bit as to how the film ended up the way it did. Essentially, The Wicker Man itself was a co-written production between Robin Hardy and Anthony Schaefer. At the time, no one really knew how much each individual had brought to the table in terms of writing for The Wicker Man, but Schaefer had a background in drama and the sort of theatre. So the argument was kind of made as, well, we know that Anthony Schaefer has a pedigree for this, so the bones of The Wicker Man, the sort of core story elements, could probably be chalked down to him, and those nice eccentricities are probably Robin Hardy's contribution, and the two of them probably kept each other in check, so to speak. It didn't get too zany because of Hardy's involvement. It didn't get too kitchen sink because of Schaefer's involvement. After The Wicker Man, Robin Hardy tried flying solo. For years, he was trying to get various productions off the ground. Probably the most infamous one, I think I talked about on that podcast a while ago, which was The Loathsome Lambton Worm, which was a production that he started writing as a sequel to The Wicker Man in, I believe, 1978, and by 1989 he'd basically given up on it ever materialising.
Probably because The Lair of the White Worm came out in 1988. I don't know how hungry people were for Loathsome Lambton Worm adaptations, but I think he was spot on in realizing that there was only room enough for one.
Well, this was it. And Hardy's big thing was, if he was going to do a sequel to The Wicker Man, he wanted it to be a multi-million-dollar endeavour. He didn't want it to be a small-budget thing. The plot of Loathsome Lambton Worm was basically that Sergeant Howie survived being burned in The Wicker Man and was taken back to the mainland, where he suffered severe disfiguring burns to excuse them to change Edward Woodward out to a different actor, basically.
Hell yeah.
Meanwhile, Christopher Lee and the villagers, sort of frustrated that their sacrifice got away, decide to summon one of the old gods, which I believe was going to be the Loathsome Lambton Worm, and Sergeant Howie would lead a crack police squad imbued with the powers of Jesus and the Lord, and it was going to become this like mythical battle of the gods style, good versus evil, with Howie riding on Pegasus's fighting Christopher Lee with eldritch horrors beyond our comprehension. And it was supposed to be this grand thing, and Hardy could never really pitch it in a way that studios A, understood, or B, liked, so it just never happened.
Can I say that I think that's a terrible idea, but I don't hate it.
Agreed.
Like
I am interested as hell just to look into the background of it, because it does sound terrible. And the thing about the cop's character in the original was he was so, like, he wasn't overbearing, but he is so like, oh, well, you know, Jesus, it's just like, buddy, read the room, calm your tits. But, you know.
I'm like, well, I think it's, you probably, I agree that movie probably never should have been made. But at the same time, I'm like, well, if you are going to retcon the end of Wicker Man, I think that's a pretty good idea for how to continue it. If you are married to the idea of retconning the end of Wicker Man and making sure that Sergeant Howie survives, if we all agree on that, then I think him leading a troop of Jesus cops against a dragon, I think that's a great way to do it.
He's got the power of the stigmata on his side.
Absolutely. Well, you'll be delighted to hear as well, and I'll pop a link over to you guys while we're here. They did do a full audio adaptation of The Loathsome Lambton Worm about 6 or 7 years ago, using scripts that Hardy was drafting for the film. So you can listen to basically a radio adaptation of it. There's also some talk, I'm learning this as we are talking about this. I believe they're also looking at creating some kind of visual version of it. How that manifests, I do not know. But yeah, so there are adaptations of that sequel out there. But obviously, when that fell through in 89, Hardy moved to America and started trying to promote other works, other things that could kind of garner attention.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. There was not a lot of successes. I believe he made a film in 2005 that didn't really take off. And then, obviously, he reworked a idea for a Wicker Man sequel, which became The Wicker Tree. And the biggest thing that will stand out on this is he pitched The Wicker Tree to multiple studios and eventually landed with British Lion, who were the company, I believe, that helped to fund and produce The Wicker Man back in the 70s.
Yeah.
So everything came full circle. And Hardy was under the impression that this was going to be a multi-million-dollar investment, that this was going to be an incredibly large budget thing, so he wrote big. And the original draft for The Wicker Tree was supposed to be much more grand, was supposed to be spanning continents, was supposed to have tons of CGI and big budgeted things going on throughout the production. And then British Lion basically got back to him after he'd already geared up to do this to say, no, this is a low budget production. You will have to scale back your script to make it work. And unlike The Wicker Man, where they basically filmed everything up front and then through British Lion, Roger Corman, the distributors in the US, chunks of it just slowly got cut off. Because they were doing this in the pre-production stage, they were just hacking off massive chunks of this film to get it under budget before they even filmed scene one. Adding to this, Christopher Lee was originally supposed to be playing the main bad guy in this film. He had a accident the year before they started filming that left him with back troubles, which meant that he couldn't film for long periods of time. So he was supposed to originally be playing the main bad guy in this. He got replaced with somebody else, but he did turn up for a little cameo, which was quite nice. Mild spoilers. Joan Collins was supposed to be playing his wife in this. And she had to drop out for another reason. Essentially, by the time that they were filming, the budget for the production was somewhere in the region of 1% what Hardy thought it was actually going to be when they started, and they'd had to chop about 2/3 of the story out to make it work.
Also, the main character was going to be Leanne Rimes.
That was what I was wondering, because the way that the character is played, it does give the indicator of something much larger as a presence. For that character.
And apparently Christopher Lee just was handing the script out to everyone he knew, because Sean Astin, who appeared in Lord of the Rings with Christopher Lee, was going to be in it. Ewan McGregor, who appeared in Star Wars with Christopher Lee, apparently, according to Wikipedia, wanted a cameo. I don't really know what that means. Obviously, it didn't happen.
Well, he was actually in the back under the horse mask. Like he was the stunt Italian Scottish police officer.
And this is the thing as well. When the film came out, one of the biggest criticisms that journalists at the time put into it was that it just didn't have that Wicker Man vibe. And I feel that that's a little disingenuous, because I don't think that it doesn't have the Wicker Man vibe. I feel that it doesn't have the basics nailed to give it the Wicker Man vibe. I feel like when Schaefer was involved in the Wicker Man, it gave it that grounding that made the eccentricities of the film stand out a bit more, made those oddities pop a little better. Having that grounding there was the important part. This being exclusively a Hardy production means that you don't have that grounding in a way that is human, I would say.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of rather strange people basically telling you how the movie ends for about an hour and 15 minutes. Which it just doesn't fly the same way. I feel like Hardy, he's not going to make anything else. I feel like Hardy as a writer or director needed somebody there to run those checks. And I feel vice versa. I feel that Hardy was the kind of person who would have, commented on somebody else's writing style, would have been able to kind of rein them in from being a bit too beige.
Oh, yeah. The one thing I'll say about this is it felt like a Lifetime movie, or like a Christian, kind of like the wiles of Christian fundamentalism, like that kind of a movie, until you get to the supernatural part, and then everything goes off the rails. But the other thing is, until it gets to, it's like they tossed about 10 different plots in a blender, and nothing really surfaced to the top. They weren't subtle at all with any part of this. And I assume probably that a good chunk of their audience came into this knowing, relatively speaking, what it was. But it took that for granted. It didn't. The thing that made the original Wicker Man so good is that it was subtle. You knew that there was something not right, but it's in that, okay, what is going on here feeling that left it. I mean, the minute that they got to the Scottish village, you knew exactly what was going to happen. You knew where it was going to end up. There's not even a question. Like, they had the subtlety of a freaking hammer.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that it gave Lifetime movie vibes there, because
it did. It was insane.
Yeah, last Christmas, I literally saw a film that was basically the plot of this without the culty ending. That's it was on the Hallmark Channel, and it was called Christmas in Scotland, and it was from 2023. And the plot of that film is an American who is an interior designer gets sent to a remote Scottish island where there is a slightly evil laird who owns this manor, who's hired her to decorate his mansion and the village with Christmas decorations, but all the villagers are really a bit off, and she eventually meets a handsome Italian Scottish man who turns out to be the lead's son.
Wow.
Yeah. It was great because I was just watching this film slowly losing my mind going, somebody must have watched this and gone, you know what, if we take the cults out of this will be a fantastic Hallmark Christmas movie. And I just can't. Yeah, I think, and to your point as well, Triv, I think one of the bigger problems that this film has on a fundamental level is that it doesn't understand how the horror of The Wicker Man worked. A big chunk of why the horror of The Wicker Man worked is because it deals in themes of isolation and faith. And it's the idea that you don't know what these villagers' intentions are. You just know that they're being a bit off with Sergeant Howie. And he's struggling to piece together what's actually going on and using his faith as a kind of reinforcement of why he has to keep pushing on, which is what makes the rug pull at the end of the film when they reveal they're all sort of murderous cultists who want their apples to grow. That much more of a, oh my God moment. You can tell that something's off, but the film is very cautious about giving you too much information up front. The Wicker Tree feels like you've just wandered into a community centre. For the vast majority of the film, there are characters who are gleefully telling you what is basically going to happen. In fact, the film tells you what the main drive of the plot is going to be around about 40 minutes into the film. And like I say, I got to about 25 minutes into this and I went, right, okay, I know who's going to die, I know when they're going to die, I know how they're going to die, I know why they're going to die, and I know all of the steps that's going to happen to get us to this point. And I really, really hoped that the last 5 to 10 minutes there would be a rug pull I didn't see coming happening. I was expecting just something that would make me go, brilliant. That was what I was waiting for. And it didn't come. I got to that last 5 or 10 minutes and went, well, basically 98% of what I said was going to happen in the first 20 minutes happened, and happened so blatantly that I can't even be surprised at how they did it.
So there are things that I do like about this movie, which we can talk a little bit more about when we get into the actual plot of this. I think the concept of variation, like a franchise of Wicker things that are essentially variations on a theme, I think that's interesting, but because of something that has come up several times, the plot of all cult horror movies being exactly the same as the plot of The Wicker Man, I don't think this is the way you execute it, because let's say this was a financial success and Robin Hardy gets to make 4 more Wicker movies. Where there's no like tension or suspense if you know at the end someone's going to get sacrificed. And it's not, obviously if you're watching Friday the 13th, the camp counselors are going to die, but that's not the point of those films. The point is the ways in which they die and enjoying that. Like, just watching someone like kind of burn to death in a wicker structure of some sort once at the very end of a movie is not giving you that same sort of adrenaline rush. So it's like, I think it's interesting that there could have been a Wicker franchise, but I think you are doomed from the outset if you're making all of them explicitly about a cult that tricks people into being ritual sacrifices.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No,
the only way you get away with a sequel of some sort or like a franchise of some sort is where they turn into different things. Like one is called The Wicker Heart. It turns into a love story.
Yeah.
I mean, thematic sequels can work. The only ones that come to mind immediately are from Italian horror directors. So, I'm thinking of things like Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy. You've got Argento with the Mother trilogy. Claudio Fabrasso.
John Carpenter's The Thing is part of a thematic trilogy.
Well, there was another Wicker sequel proposed, and it was supposed to complete the trilogy. It was called Wrath of the Gods. Not a lot of detail is known about this because Robin Hardy died before they even got to any kind of pre-production stage. They'd literally just got a treatment written for it, and the plot of it sounds bizarre. I think it's fair to say. Considering he wrote Loathsome Lambton Worm, that's saying something. It was gonna be set in Norway, I believe, and the plot was gonna concern a theme park that was opening up that was based on the Eldritch gods. And a religious couple were going to go to the theme park for a bit of a laugh, but it would turn out that through mysticisms and mystics that the gods that inhabited the park as kind of statues or rides were actually real. And it was basically going to be a battle of faiths between the old gods and new religion. And it was going to be this great big showdown. And somebody would be burnt in a wicker structure at some point, I guess.
Of course.
A wicker roller coaster.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. There's some kind of wicker Ferris wheel where you can put like 200 people on it, and as it spins round slowly, they all burn when they get to the bottom. But it never saw the light of day. That being said, I think that thematic sequels can work, but it's a very delicate balancing act where you have to be careful about not embedding the reason why people go to watch that film being anything other than the themes. So, for example, if you make the characters too likeable in one film, when they come back to watch another, they'll be quite disappointed, as was the case with Halloween 1, 2, and 3. They wanted to make it an anthology series. People went to Halloween 3, where's Michael Myers? And that's where it went. Their themes have to be consistent, but they don't have to be repetitive. And I feel like one of the biggest problems I had with The Wicker Tree was it felt like it was being written by somebody who had watched The Wicker Man and gone, okay, well, people are coming to watch this for The Wicker Man. Let's just pull all of these elements of The Wicker Man and then subtly embed them into The Wicker Tree so that The Wicker Man fans will go, oh, yeah, that's Christopher Lee's jacket from The Wicker Man. Oh, that's... the bar scene, they're recreating the landlord's daughter musical scene, but it's a bit more touching because they've turned it on her heads. Oh, it's withered fruits. Let's do something about being a metaphor for children in this. And it's just one of those where it feels a bit, I don't want to say cringy, but it's a bit too on the nose for me.
Did you guys see that one of the children from the original Wicker Man was the cook in this one? Like the drunk cook?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, she was
Daisy.
The actress. You'll remember the scene where Howie goes to one of the students' desks and opens it, and there's a beetle that's been tied up going around a piece of string. That's the girl who was in that scene was brought back in for the Wicker Tree to play the chef.
Yep.
But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like, there was no need because it's not even set on Summer Isle. So A, how did she get off the island? And B, why are they doing this? Other than for people like me to go, oh, that's the girl from The Wicker Man who tied that beetle up in her desk.
So, this movie it came out. It premiered at the Fantasia Festival in 2011. Didn't get a wide theatrical release. That's about it. The movie begins with a shot panning up on a tree made out of wicker, a wicker tree, if you will.
Oh my God.
And at this point, I was like, well, what exactly is wicker? I mean, I know it's sort of like twigs woven into baskets, but I didn't know if there's a specific kind of wood that does come from a species of tree called a wicker tree. But no, there's no type of tree called wicker. It's just willow wood, rattan, reed, bamboo. And the most typical braiding pattern is called the Wiener Geflecht.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sounds like a porn name.
So we cut to Dallas, Texas. A radio DJ says, it's 8 a.m. and a glorious 74 degrees here in downtown Dallas. Let's kick things off with our hometown sweetheart, Beth Boothby. And we get some acoustic country music with lyrics like, feather beds are soft, painted rooms are bonny. And this is something that we're going to talk about a lot up front in this movie, but it keeps rearing its head throughout the film. There are certain things in this movie where it's very apparent that this was written by a British person.
Yes.
About American people. And the word bonny is one of them, because even in like bluegrass or like Appalachian folk music that is heavily rooted in Scottish and Irish folk music, I don't think I've ever heard an American person use the word bonny, but it is like, oh, well, we have to put that in because of corn rigs from Wicker Man, but like no one uses that word here, not even in an archaic context.
So right from the off, my first impression as these opening titles and the Dallas stuff came in, my immediate thought was a kind of weary vibe with it, because with The Wicker Man, one of the things that I love about it is that it is a vibrant, vivid, unapologetic for what it is kind of film. I mean, the opening of The Wicker Man is Howie flying over gorgeous, crisp, green, vivid fields, fruit hanging on the bough with vivid reds and pinks, and it's a very colourful, very airy film. So the intro to this, which is people kind of flailing around in a field, and they first of all immediately hit the curse of the 2000s horror film genre, which is colour grades being desaturated, sort of brownish, flat profile colour grading, and the colour is not there. No sort of whimsy, no sort of eccentricity to it. It's just flat drone music over what looked like badly overlaid titles of. I mean, the first thing that hit me was everything looks very low budget for what this should be.
See, Lifetime movie.
Yeah, basically. And then to have the kind of breakneck thing of, okay, well, we're watching a film that is predominantly around paganism, around Celtic monsters, gods, to then have it jump cut to busy Dallas, Texas, with a DJ introducing a country singer. It completely threw me. I was for a second just kind of sitting there going, I don't know where this is going at this point. Are they going to try and say, because have some kind of comment around evangelicalism as a thing, where the first film was around just a Christian versus the old ways? And then I got the overwhelming urge to start doing Dallas parodies, J.R. Summer Isle, all that kind of business. But yeah, I think I was a little disheartened by the opening of this film, because I went in with good faith, expecting it to try not to walk the walk that The Wicker Man walked, but to try and at least keep it to a sense of belonging to the same series. And this felt very much a different beast. What didn't help either is the section that we go into where Beth is performing and singing those songs takes place in a church where they have a kind of brief discussion around spreading the good word, which is more or less a one-for-one lift of a scene that was deleted from The Wicker Man's theatrical cut. In the director's cut, there's an extended sequence in the beginning of the film where Sergeant Howie basically talks about how Christianity is the one true religion and we need to spread the word of God to everybody who will listen to us, because otherwise people will grow up to be heathens. So I felt bad that Hardy was cribbing his own stuff for this film, despite even given especially that those scenes aren't like obscure, they're not like things that people can't access. Every release of The Wicker Man since the early 2000s has had the director's cut included, which has those scenes there. And that's a problem that plagues the rest of this film as well. There's a lot of scenes where you watch it and you go, oh, that was from the director's cut, they've just slightly reframed it, or oh, this was from the theatrical cut and they've just tweaked ever so slightly the characters' interactions to make it a bit more modern. It was quite off-putting to me in that sense.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, because they talk about how big of a star she was and how big of a star she is in the, I guess, Christian music scene. There is nothing about her, either side of her personality or her music career, that would indicate that she's that big of a star.
Nope.
It felt, and I know that that's kind of what we're aiming for here, is it's not low budget per se, but it has all of those hallmarks where they try to show a, quote, full church, and they fill the first 2 rows and then strategically put people to make it look fuller than what it is.
Yeah.
And it felt cheap. It felt like they were aiming a lot higher and just, going with the idea of trust me, bro.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
and the idea, sorry.
No, go ahead.
And the idea of them, of all the places to choose, to go to Scotland, and I know that that's reasoning for the plot, but to evangelize to Scotland of all places, when do you ever hear people going door to door in Scotland?
So this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, that I feel like it's coming from a place of Robin Hardy's ignorance about evangelical Christianity, but I think he accidentally gets it right. So I lived in Texas for like 20 years of my life, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, as a matter of fact.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And what you're saying, Triv, makes complete sense unless you've lived there and met crazy people. Like, yes, why would you go to Scotland of all places to spread the good word of the Lord? But I did know a woman whose mother would do this same thing every year in Poland.
Yep.
Really?
And Poland is like overwhelmingly
so
like, yes, 70% of the people there identify as Catholic. So it's not good enough that they believe in the same God as you. They don't believe in him in the right way. So you have to go to Poland and tell these people. But it's also like, you know, it's having your cake and eating it too, because you're going out there and proselytizing, but you're risking nothing because you're going to another first world country. You're staying in, you know, hotels where the accommodations are equivalent to what they would be in America. You get to just basically go on a vacation and then spend the rest of your life talking about how good of a Christian you are because you spread the word of God to people that had already heard the word of God. So yeah, it's I think that Robin Hardy probably didn't know that this is something that actually happens. And like I said, it's probably something that comes from a point of ignorance, but I think he did end up getting it right in a weird way because this stuff does happen.
Yeah, I can corroborate that as well. My grandparents were very heavily invested in Christianity and they ran churches briefly. And one of the things that you sort of did learn as a byproduct of hanging around a lot of churches and church culture is they do try and pull in American evangelicals and Christian preachers because in Christian circles, those group of people are seen as kind of a little bit celebrity, a little bit, you know, more sort of exotic in terms of that. So we would regularly have American pastors and preachers invited over to a church where the congregation was probably like 10 people, 15 people. And these would be like preachers who had like video series and DVD series back at a time before the internet was really a prominent thing. And they would come and they'd give their sort of testimony, and then they'd go around the area and would, you know, knock on a few doors and engage people in light conversation. But as you've rightly said, it's very much a low risk situation because the people they talk to are the people who are already bought in. It's not like you're, you know, trying to get somebody who's dead against religion or a completely different religion to you. They usually just go and talk to extended family members of people who were already at church. Right. So it's kind of a, like you say, it's a vacation really with a thing on the side.
I mean, even later on, a character asks, Beth Boothby if she believes that a child in Borneo who has gone their whole life never even hearing of Jesus, if he dies, is he going to hell? And Beth is like, well, I don't know, but if it says that in the Bible, like, yes, that is what I do believe. So it's like, I didn't really connect those two things until just now, but it's like, yeah, she's a huge hypocrite because she could be going to Borneo and saving people that are destined to hell, but instead she's going to Scotland and just knocking on the doors of people who very likely are just a different form of Christian than she is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. A big question that hung over me through most of this film, but particularly during the beginning, was whether Robin Hardy, as a writer, had a problem with evangelical Christianity or whether he had a problem with Americans' interpretation of religion. Because, and I can't speak for you guys, but when I was watching this film, I did not get the sense that Robin Hardy liked Americans very much. They're
very like, and I think it owns up to sort of the actors too. Not to say, I mean, you can only work with what's in front of you, and it's hard to know in those circumstances whether they're being coached to go that route or not. But the portrayals were stereotypical at best. Like, you didn't get any depth. Like, you know, we get the anger, and I know I'm kind of going ahead, but we get the anger of Beth looking back at her former life and fighting all of these things that she was in her previous life. But you don't feel anything from it. It's just oh, well, this was a thing I was. Oh, gosh, how terrible was I? You know, that's really all you get. There's nothing deeper. So I like listening to that, Chris, you sent out that thing for the kids, the Hardy kids and kind of their experience. Hardy did go back and forth between the UK and America quite consistently. So I don't know that he maybe had a disdain for Americans per se, but he definitely spent time amongst a fair group of them. I think I took it more as a evangelical thing more than a, American specifically.
Mm. It was hard for me. Yeah, well, this is it. It was hard for me to place because on the one hand, as you say, they can only work with what material they're given, but they chronically put these two American characters in situations where there's an obvious answer and they choose not to take that obvious answer. Any of the additional American characters who turn up in this seem very close-minded. They seem to approach things very much of this is because this, rather than having any kind of engaging conversation, whereas the other islanders, the other villagers throughout the film get a bit more dialogue. And I think what led me to believe it was maybe more anti-American rather than anti-evangelical is just that Robin Hardy was a man of a particular age, and there was a lot of negative feelings towards Americanisms for that particular generation of person around that time. A lot of American culture was perceived by these people to be inauthentic, to be a bit cheesy, to be not true of real life. I mean, it was referred to as Yank bashing back in the day, but that's kind of by the by. And it's only really in more recent times that people have kind of better understood American culture and the things that come from that and are able to kind of appreciate what that culture represents and what it brings to the table. Because, like I say, England, very, very prejudiced country back in the 70s, 80s and early 90s. You didn't have to really be that much different from an English person to invoke prejudice from certain subsections. And Hardy being the age he was, I went in on the assumption that he probably didn't like Americans and was portraying them that way.
I have to kind of laugh because they talk, you talk about the idea of Americans being cheesy. There were so many cheesy moments, like, you're going along and it's dramatic, and then all of a sudden you have this kind of corny, campy stop in a piece of dialogue, like the looking for the eyes, when they're, later on in the movie. It's just like, what's going on here?
Oh yeah.
I do think, and I could be wrong, and this is, sorry, back to the way that they portrayed American evangelicals. I think it's in that they answer differently than the way you would anticipate them reacting. That's kind of the right quote decision. Because that's what God would want, as compared to the logical, okay, for your own safety, this would be the better option,
Yeah, and to go along with that, there's a scene way later in the movie where the housekeeper for the Morrisons is explaining to Beth, like, the origins behind Mayday and how that relates to Easter, and the music sting is, like, very ominous, and you can tell that just Beth is very uncomfortable when being confronted by things that are facts, such as Easter being based off of pagan holidays. It just so conflicts with her worldview that she just starts to look a little bit queasy and kind of very quickly changes the subject. Mm-hmm. So I think he is quite astute, because that's how those people act in real life. And I can speak of that from my own lived experience. But so, the main girl, Beth Boothby, she's leaving Dallas in a limousine. And on the way, the limo stops at a crossroads to pick up Beth's fiance, Steve Thompson. And I thought this was kind of interesting because of the American folk beliefs about crossroads. Whole Robert Johnson thing, going to the crossroads to make a deal with the devil. I don't think it ends up really figuring into the story at all. So I think Robin Hardy probably didn't know about that and just thought a rural crossroads was visually interesting. But for a second there, I was like, maybe he's tying, British folk beliefs to American folk beliefs, but it doesn't go anywhere.
That's a good chunk of this movie.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of this film could be answered with, well, they didn't have the money to do that, so...
yeah.
Crossroads aren't as expensive as regular roads,
They get to the rural church that we talked a little bit about, and I wanted to park on this a little bit because there's a couple things. There is a sign outside the church that says, long before email, God answered Knee-mail. Send him a message today. Come pray with us. And I 100% believe that was real. And that was just at the church because I've read many things like that driving by churches. Also, when they get there, there's like 10 people standing outside and all of them are wearing cowboy hats.
Well, yeah, it's America, isn't it?
Which I gotta say,
do that, don't you?
A lot of people in Texas wear them, not every single person, and typically not women, and especially not at church.
Well, they bring that up later. I think that's probably the only time we don't see Steve without his hat. I mean, he's got it on while he's doing his business, while he's sleeping.
Yeah. I mean, that was another one of the things where I'm like, he doesn't understand American culture because they're in a church. A woman comes up and says, it's a local taboo to not wear a cowboy hat in church. And you don't do that in America either. Like, we're expected to take our hat off for the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem. It's not like this good old boy from Texas would have to be told to take his hat off in church.
Well, if you go Catholic, if you go old school pre-Vatican II Catholic, there was a thing about wearing head coverings if you're female. But yeah, if you're a guy, you take off your hat in church.
Yeah. So inside this church, Beth is singing one of her smash hit gospel bluegrass songs, the ones we constantly hear on the radio all the time that propel you to international stardom. And the leader of the congregation expositions at us, we are gathered here today to say Godspeed to Beth and Steve, two of our young redeemers who are going to give 2 years of their young lives to God and to bringing his message to the lost people of Scotland. Seemingly, there are many people there who have forgotten the Lord. Many, I hear, don't even believe in angels. Don't even believe in angels, folks. Which it's like, yes, Christians believe in angels, but he says it as if it's like one of the main tent poles when... If you were asking someone, what does it mean to be Christian? Belief in angels probably is not even cracking your top 20.
No. And the wild part of this altogether, and the thing that I think is the cornerstone for why I just was so uninvested in this, is the way they talked about Scotland made it sound like there were patches where it was full of agnostic baby eaters. When one of the more popular programs that was playing in Scotland at that time is a program called Songs of Praise, which was basically a live broadcast pre-recorded live broadcast from a church somewhere in the country that would play every Sunday night, that had incredibly high turnout where people would actually come and watch the show every night if it was for people who couldn't get to church, basically.
I mean, that kind of contextualizes the performance in this.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Songs of Praise has been running for years and years. I mean, I think it's on tonight. We're recording this on a Sunday. And it's literally just, they go to churches up and down the country. The BBC will set up massive camera rigs. They get like famous Christian singers in. And it turns out, and you have hordes of people piling into churches to hear the word of the Lord and sing carols and, sing hymns and all sorts. They do Christmas specials as well. So when they're talking about, the heathenistic life of Scotland, I'm sitting there going, I think this is like the top 10 most watched program in Scotland every week. So I don't know where they're getting the idea that this is, an off place.
Yeah.
As a bit of a springboard as well, this is probably a good time to say I would have liked this to have been a musical in the same way The Wicker Man was a musical. It is not very good, in my opinion.
No.
And I think the big problem with it is the songs that are original songs are not as interesting as the reworked folk songs that were featured in The Wicker Man. They chose
like literally the worst genre of music. That's the problem.
Yeah. And the songs that aren't original, the songs that are ones that existed as hymns and stuff like that are just really badly arranged and just don't sound very good. Yeah, so whenever it cuts to a musical number, I think they were expecting people to be like, oh yeah, great, Wicker Man moment, let's have a look at old sing-song, and they're all just quite depressing or very incoherent mixes of songs that, no, just
they're
no.
just basic. They're the... I did like, and this comes later, the way that they took like traditional Christian hymns and kind of flipped them for the pagan side. That's one of the things I did appreciate about this. And one in particular that makes a couple of appearances. The way it's done isn't, like, the way that it's performed isn't great, but the use of it is kind of cool. It's not, like, revolutionary, but it's one of the better things in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. So they're off to Scotland, the borders. They are greeted by Sir Lachlan Morrison and Delia Morrison. They are sponsoring Beth's performance at a church. Beth and Steve show off their purity rings like a couple of weirdos. And observing from afar, Lachlan and Delia talk about how perfect Beth and Steve are. Delia says, I bet she smells of the dairy, musky bush, milky tits, and just a hint of warm cow shit behind the ears.
You know, those deleted lines from The Wicker Man really do shine in this film.
They do.
Beth sings some Jesus shit for a crowd of 4 people, and Delia sits down next to Steve and flirts with him a little bit. And here, along with the thing about taking your hat off that we talked about, there's another great, these people aren't Americans, because Steve is played by an English actor named Henry Garrett, and he's talking about Beth, and he says, Papa says she sounds like an angel. No, but I don't know if there's a single American English dialect where someone would say Papa.
Maybe back in Victorian times, like very posh upper New York. Well, Papa says, but yeah, otherwise.
Yeah.
It was at this exact moment in the film that in my notes that I was making whilst watching, I basically wrote the entire rest of the film's plot, barring one plot twist that I didn't predict accurately, but I did predict would happen. So from this point on, I basically was just sort of comfortably sat here going, I now know how this film is going to run and end. You have to do something to impress me now, because I'm kind of, I've got 48 minutes left of this film at this point.
Well, maybe this next scene will impress you, Dan, because Beth and Steve go to their hotel room later that night and they're watching Beth's performance on TV.
Which, why? What about her performance would...
Because it's the Scottish program that Dan was telling us about.
Oh,
Songs of Praise or whatever.
Songs of Praise? I mean, she could be wearing a thong.
They like smelling their own farts. What can I say?
Things get hot and heavy for a moment, and Beth has to remind Steve of their purity rings. But then on the television, we get a glimpse of, quote, the old Beth Boothby with her song Trailer Trash Slut. So guys, tell me a little bit about this music video.
I grew up on country music and regarded it was, 90s and early 2000s. But I will tell you that I have never heard the word slut or whore used in a popular country song. And the fact that it appears here makes me feel all the more like this is a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
Yes. I have seen better country music videos assembled on YouTube in the early 2000s.
Yes, and Beth is embarrassed by this, but they have to show us the music video, so I guess Beth and Steve have never used a remote control for a TV before, because for like a minute and a half, they can't get the TV to turn off. Good shit.
Well, it's that left hand, like, driving.
Yeah.
That right hand driving that
are reversed.
Yeah, exactly. Toilets go the other way too in Scotland.
Just kept hitting volume up.
The lyrics, as Triv alluded to, call me cheap, call me a whore. It may be true if you get in my door. There are pleasures in heaven and God above, but baby, nothing compares to my trailer trash love. My favorite line was like right before she manages to shut the TV off, she just says, I was born in a car. Which I thought was great. And I think this part kind of implies that along with having purity rings, are they both born again virgins?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This was the thing that the lyrics of the trashy song, I'm going to refer to it as, even if you'd have told me it was written by AI, I'd have believed you at this point. Because it felt like whoever was writing the lyrics to these original songs was just given a brief of, make it sound the least Christian you can, but be literal. Like if she'd have come out and been like, God smells a wee and the devil's great, I like, taking my clothes off for money, it would have been only marginally worse than what was actually presented, so...
By the way, this is Dan's upcoming country album. Those are lyrics from that, so
stay
tuned.
The album's called I Hate Stuff, open brackets, probably, so...
Dan was also born in a car.
I was born in 16 cars across the Great Virginia Plain.
Wow. So the next day, Beth and Steve go door to door trying to save the wretched souls of the heathens of the Scottish Borders council houses. And Steve, they're not having any luck. It's just a bunch of Scottish people. No, sorry. And Steve's like,
terribly sorry.
Those city folks just hated our guts as soon as they saw us. And I looked it up. The population of the Scottish Borders is 116,000. The DFW Metroplex is 8.5 million. So it felt very weird for him to be calling these people city folks, knowing where he came from. But also, I don't know, Dan, I could be wrong. I just don't feel like anyone anywhere refers to the Scottish Borders as city folks.
No. I would say that if somebody referred to them as city folks, we'd be going, what do you mean? Now, don't get me wrong. There are cities within the borders, but I live in a city and I wouldn't consider myself a city folk, and our population's like 64 million. So...
Beth and Steve have tried nothing and they're all out of ideas. So after a couple hours of proselytizing in the big city, they decide to go with Lachlan and Delia to their country estate to convert some rural heathens.
At this point, there was one moment that, and I'm not sure if cringe is the right word, but there are moments throughout this film that just made me go, okay. And it was the moment where Lachlan Morris speaks to them and goes, oh yeah, I run the nearby power plant. Of course, when I mention that, people assume I'm Mr. Burns from The Simpsons and I'm evil. And that's just like, well, yes, you are. You're wearing Christopher Lee's jacket from the end of The Wicker Man. Mm-hmm. You could not be signaling any harder that you are supposed to be the bad guy. You look like the head of the Church of Satanism. What are you doing?
On the way there, this is kind of where Beth and Delia get into a debate about heathen beliefs. Delia basically goes full on, I'm a pagan, debate me. And, basically Steve and Beth are like biblical literalists. They believe everything in the Bible is literally true and literally happened the way it was depicted.
Literally.
Yeah. So power plant, Lachlan runs one of those, which I wrote in my notes isn't important, but it actually is, because the second time I watched it and paid more close attention, I was like, oh yes, it actually is important that he runs this power plant. They drop Steve off at a local inn to stay at because since he and Beth are purity ring people, they can't stay together. And there's a guy with a raven and a wicker basket of dead baby mice that quotes Edgar Allan Poe.
And that the film is on a road to nowhere when that presents itself, and I just kind of do a shrug. I just kind of go, okay, and what's he doing here? Why is he, and it wasn't even a perplex, like with the original Wicker Man, characters like that would turn up every 5 to 10 minutes, and you would kind of be like, oh, another strange islander, what's their eccentricity? But this character, I just was like, it felt like it was trying so hard to be, here's a weird, quirky guy who may or may not be important to the story. Look at his dead mice and his pet bird. I don't know. I felt a bit disconnected from it. I felt like it was trying too hard to be weird.
I would agree.
Yes.
I Like, and I know that, like, for the most part, every character that's in this that appears has some kind of important bit. But, like, there's really, for this particular one, they say that they call him the Oracle because he talks in riddles and stuff. He really has no greater point to this plot.
No.
And even at one point, it was like after the, like, you know, the post church feast thing outside, you get kind of bird vision. It's that kind of walleye vision thing going that literally led to nothing. It didn't, and maybe in a different cut it mattered, but this character and everything that he does, there's no point to it.
Yeah. I also like found it a very odd choice for him to be quoting Edgar Allan Poe, who's an American. When you think about, like, this takes place in Scotland, and it's sort of like the whole thing is like they have these hyper localized Scottish pagan beliefs. To have like this mystic character who they refer to as the Oracle quoting American writers just seemed kind of weird to me.
Yeah. I mean, Poe, in the UK at least, Poe is really only regarded by the sort of goth alt subcultures. If you went up to some random person on the street who wasn't goth or alt and said, hey, can you quote me some Poe, or could you tell me what you know about Edgar Allan Poe? They would probably go as far as, well, I know he wrote stuff. And that would be about as far as it would go. He's not a figure that is really taught in our schools or that we would really know. So the fact that this guy is, like, really into Poe quotes is a little strange, I would say.
Maybe he's just a big Baltimore Ravens fan. He loves American football. Actually, the guy who plays Steve, even though he is English, he, I guess, played American football in England in some capacity. Random fact I just remembered. Beth goes to stay with Mary Hilliard, the Morrisons' housekeeper. Back at the inn, we find out that Steve has the ministry of card tricks. He performs for a table of local lads, pulling out cards one by one and saying things like, the ace reminds me that there is only one God. The deuce reminds me that the Bible is divided into two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The 3 reminds me of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he goes through every single card in the deck, and this scene felt like it was 10 minutes long.
So as somebody who grew up in a predominantly Christian background and was privy to the song Deck of Cards for most of my childhood and sort of adolescence, this was the equivalent of nails on a chalkboard for me. It triggered a trauma response that my exact notes were all in caps. Oh, for fuck's sake, he's doing the fucking Deck of Cards song. Fuck off. It was... especially in the UK, there was a real movement, and it was in America as well, but in the UK it really took off. There was a real movement around story songs where they would just not even sing, they would just talk a song over music, and there was things like Golden Guitar, but Deck of Cards was probably the most popular. It was in the charts for years in the UK, and the Christian community really picked up on that and thought it was so cool and so rad that they would take every opportunity to completely recite that whole thing to you. And I have wasted hours of my life listening to that card trick song. So when it started up in this film, oh boy, I
can't say for certain, but this could just be another one of Robin Hardy's not understanding American people. Because I've never heard of that. But
really,
I was also raised Catholic where we wouldn't do things like that in the first place. So it's possible that it was popular amongst the denominations of Christian here, and I just wouldn't have heard about it.
I've heard of it. Not through my own, because I was raised Catholic too. I didn't get it through that, like, my own Catholic education, but my mom had this thing about sending out every single forward of anything that was Christian or Catholic, like, for probably 10 years. Yeah. And this was a reoccurring one. Like, it was a, quote, real story about how people back in the, like, Civil War era would talk about a deck of cards and how everything related back to God and all that kind of stuff. So from that perspective, it's not quite the same thing, but it's in that realm.
The song version of Deck of Cards, it picks up on a similar theme, although they shifted the date slightly. It's now around a soldier in the army as of the present day, 1970s, I think the song came out. who's been reported to his drill sergeant for insubordination because he had a pack of cards on him. And when the sergeant says, well, you can get kicked out of the army for gambling, he's like, no, sir, I don't gamble. With the ace, I see the one true God. Oh, God, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you hear it so many hundred times. And the problem as well is you have to be nice. Because if you don't sort of sit and let them do the whole thing, then they get upset with you like it's your problem. And it's not. It's them. It's definitely them. Because they all only know the deck of cards thing. I'll send you the link to the song. I can assure you it is, it's an experience. Definitely.
Is there a follow-up to Deck of Cards, like 2 Deck of Cards or anything like that?
So the sequel to Deck of Cards is Big Bad John by Jimmy Dean. Yeah.
So just as he finishes his prestidigitation, some guys in the inn break out into a rendition of Wild Mountain Thyme, a Scottish-Irish folk song that was recently prominently featured in the movie Sinners. And meanwhile, Beth tries on the May Queen dress that Mary Hilliard and some other ladies have made for the upcoming May Day festival. It's against tradition to let anyone other than the May Queen wear the dress, but Mary happens to know that Lachlan and Delia plan on asking Beth to be this year's May Queen. Wow.
Gasp.
Shock.
I do wonder, and I know that this is a moot point, but did they go in? Obviously, they wanted these guys to come over. They saw them and said, oh, well, this American couple is going to be perfect for what we need them for. Mm-hmm. What if they would have said no?
Probably gone to another church.
Or they would have shown any sign of any, conscious thought towards their own safety at any point through this. Well, we're not supposed to have anybody try this dress on, but here you go. It's,
yeah.
It fits me perfectly. How did you know?
This is another thing that I disliked about this film versus The Wicker Man, because The Wicker Man, you have a kind of plausible deniability. Howie is kept away from everything until it's too late, really, for him to back out of the situation he's in. But in this film, they actively, I don't want to say antagonize, but they actively pursue this couple. I mean, it's the equivalent of, why have you put me in this giant pot of boiling water? Why are you covering me in barbecue sauce? I don't understand what's happening. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating because, as Triv said, at any point, if this couple had just gone, actually, these people are a bit weird, let's get out of here. The whole premise of the film either would have fallen apart or they would have just jumped to what happens at the end a lot sooner. It's like the Queen of the May stuff in The Wicker Man was very much a shell to hide what the actual intentions of the group were. Yeah. So the fact that not only do they bring that concept back, but they actually don't have the subtlety with it even more anymore, just left me kind of a bit like, oh, okay, well, all right. There's a recurring theme across this whole film. They take all these really high, sort of more subtle concepts that The Wicker Man played with quite sort of pleasantly, and they just literalize it. A lot of this film is just very literal. What you see and what is said is what you get. And I think that's one of the things that's the most disheartening about this, is you're not getting any extra layers. It's just very blunt.
Yeah. I did actually also wonder, and I don't know if this is something that can be answered or not, why did her being a singer make a difference? I thought when I first watched this, I thought, okay, well, they're going to have that play into some part of the thing before they burn her alive. And they didn't. There was no, outside of her, oh, she's got the voice of an angel. There was nothing that applied to this being of any difference one way or the other.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it mattered at all.
No, I think the only thing that I think could possibly be connected to it is obviously with her having the more liberal background where she was a little bit more of a pop singer, that they were maybe trying to lean into that sort of evangelical line of you can be redeemed, you can have your sins absolved, which the original film was kind of leaning into a little bit, but again, more subtly. I think that they were playing more with the idea of, well, these characters are reborn, so to speak, which means that they have been absolved in the eyes of God, and it's more sort of testing their faith of people who have been known to sin, whereas Howie was straight cut for the entirety of the film and made a point of saying, I do not do this, I don't do that. Again, I think it's playing with the idea that you can be just forgiven of things that, previously would have been seen as, well, no, you've crossed a line, now you're done. And I think they do play on that. There's a couple of scenes where they talk about, have you not committed sins? Oh, yeah, well, I have, but, God forgives. Which, again, in The Wicker Man, you wouldn't have had that. It wouldn't have been a case of, I can't imagine Howie being like, well, yeah, I have done stuff, but hey, big guy, he's given me a pass. So,
We also get some scenes of the Morrisons' head groom, Lolly, having sex with a police officer named Orlando, and she challenges him to have sex with her 7 times in one night.
Busy boy.
Yep.
I think I tried to figure out the first, and this is one of those things I figured out on watch 3. That he was actually, I think, trying to figure out what was going on with them.
Yeah.
And she was keeping him busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Orgasissimo.
Yes. With a horse head.
I do love is that this actress's real life name is Honeysuckle Weeks, which is a very Summer Isle name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this is something that they show several times, and it has no point. Maybe in some other version of the script, it would have played a bigger role, but it essentially is just an excuse to have nudity in the film at this point.
Again, I sort of stem it back to The Wicker Man. I just think that they thought, well, there's that bit where they're all having sex in the graveyard, so people are coming to this film, off the back of Britt Eklund doing a seduction dance and stuff like that. They're going to want to see boobs in the movie, so we've got to put at least one sex scene in, otherwise people won't think the film's horny enough.
Yeah, and the next morning, Steve goes on a horse ride and finds Lolly naked in a stream. He immediately disavows his oath of chastity and has sex with her. Awesome. The first slightest bit of temptation, and he's just like, fuck it.
It reminded me of that old Dave Chappelle show thing with Rick James, where they got the actual Rick James in, and he was like, I'd never punch Charlie Murphy. I love Charlie Murphy. He's great. So anyway, I punched Charlie Murphy. And it was just absolutely fantastic script writing. As you can probably tell at this point, just the fact that it was so easily given up. Also was less appreciative of extended shots of his backside as he went into the lake. It was giving Tommy Wiseau in the Room vibes, honestly.
Oh, come on. You know what? You guys get boobs all the time. Give me something.
There's, if you look close enough, and I did, there's a little bit of sack in there. You can see some sack from behind.
Well, we get sack later, not quite in the same way, but we do get talk of sack.
Yes, we do.
I had one more question relating specifically to Steve. I can't tell, and maybe it's just because you kind of come into these things one way or the other, but it's hard to tell whether they actually like Steve or they think he's just awful. I had a horrible time telling.
You mean the writers?
The way that the people...
Or the villagers?
The way that the villagers spoke to him. It was very much you kind of got that, like that, and it's hard to tell whether they're in awe of him or whether they're just okay, we got to deal with this fool.
I can only speak as an English person who knows other English people, but the vibe that I got from the way those performances were led would lead me to believe that they thought that he was contemptible but necessary. That's kind of where it was. So it's kind of like, we really don't like him, but we need him because he's, for points that will be raised later in the film. So we have to act nice to him, but believe me, we will be doing something to him as soon as it is convenient to him not to be here anymore. We'll have his liver with the fava beans and the nice Chianti.
Yeah.
Basically.
I think, some of the chiding that they do is a little bit mean-spirited, but also I kind of think it's just overall neutral because that is the sort of things that happen to you when you're an outsider. Like when people are asking him about his cowboy hat and his horse and his shooters, it is a little bit rude, but it's also it's just true to reality. if Dan came over to America, everyone would be fascinated by his accent and ask him what time he takes his tea and just, saying like very stereotypical things. So
I'd have my answers ready. We have cucumber sandwiches at 4:30. Tea is at 5. If anybody's late, they get shot by the king. It's just the way it works. He's a very busy man. He has a lot of people to shoot.
Lolly tells Steve that the Morrisons want Steve to be the laddie. I feel like this whole laddie thing is extremely undercooked. It's not ever really quite explained. I didn't really have time to dig into it. I assume that it is based on some sort of folk tradition, but it's just like he gets chased. But they don't, I don't know. It's weird.
I mean, so this is, I'm not sure, but just like the way that they did it and everything reminded me of a fox hunt.
Yeah.
Was that kind of, because like even like the name laddie, don't they kind of go that route with like, isn't like, and I'm thinking back to Fox and the Hound. I think they actually call the fox laddie. Now, whether that has any bearing on like a name for a baby fox, yeah.
So, I mean, I took it to be more of a kind of hodgepodge of various sort of old way traditions. So there would be traditions in small village communities where somebody would be nominated to play, I don't know, a fool or play a character of disrepute. And as part of a tradition, they would be chased through or out of the village, and there would be sort of celebrations based on, like it's similar thing to St. Patrick's Day, where they chase the snakes out of Ireland and stuff like that. So the vibe I got with this was that it was a mixture of that and some older Celtic traditions, and fox hunting is a very good analogy for it as well, especially with the head start elements to it. But certainly, as we get towards the end of the film, you do get that sense of a hunter and prey dynamic going on. But yeah, there are some old world traditions where they would have a nominated person sort of get chased out of the village as part of traditions that date back to folklore stories and things like that. Whether this is actually based on a specific one or whether they've just pulled 3 or 4 different ideas out and smushed them together, though, I don't know.
Yeah. After doing the deed, Lolly explains to Steve that she's kind of the avatar of the goddess Sullus. She's all things to all men, and she is hoping to get pregnant. And Steve notices that during the sex, he lost his silver ring. And then we get to a scene in a boardroom at the power plant where it is revealed that the power plant has poisoned the water table and made the villagers infertile.
Of course.
I didn't put this together until watching the movie for the second time. Lolly is like naked in a stream that they're like, oh, this is Sullus's fountain or whatever. And the water is warm. And then after seeing this scene, I realized, oh, like it's probably warm because of like nuclear waste from the nuclear power plant.
I think that this is a very expensive endeavour for the people of this village. If they have to fly 2 Americans out every time they want to try and propagate the village, when there's literally a perfectly good village of fertile people next door, this is a bit of a cost sinkhole, really, especially in this British economy. I'm a bit concerned for them, honestly.
Yeah. So after accepting the roles of May Queen and the laddie, Steve and Beth are taken to a hunting lodge in the woods, and Steve tells Beth that he's going to stay for the May Day festival, but after that, he wants to go back home. He's just a dumb cowboy, not fit to be a redeemer. Beth notices that Steve has lost his purity ring, but Steve doesn't come clean about having sex with Lolly. Lachlan fills Steve in on his role as the laddie. He just needs to make it to a castle while everyone chases him. And that evening, Beth is preparing for bed in the housekeeper's quarters, and the Morrisons' butler, Beam, brings her a glass of hot milk, and a cat named Magog drinks some of the milk and then knocks the glass over, which shatters on the floor.
Up to this point, I think I discovered the other big problem that I had with this, which is the sense of isolationism and loneliness and that sort of challenge to faith is just so missing from this film. With The Wicker Man, it was very much a case of Howie finding things out for himself or being very, very cautiously drip-fed steers as to where the villagers wanted him to go, but you didn't really get a lot of time talking to the other villagers. Or if you did, it was very fragmented. It was, they would turn up for 5 minutes at the beginning and then maybe 2 minutes towards the end, and then they'd be in the finale. I think Lord Summerisle is the only person that actually gets a meaty chunk of conversation between Howie and another person.
Mm-hmm.
This film, it feels too open. It feels like the characters are too open with their intentions. You're having lots of scenes where characters who aren't the main characters are chatting about what they're going to do to the main characters. It's all a bit too cozy, and it kind of removes that sense of isolation. It removes that sense of you don't really know what's going on. If anything, I feel like the majority of this film, you're being spoon-fed exactly what's going on, a little too heavy-handedly, which kind of threw me a bit.
I think there's way too much emphasis in this movie when it comes to like the whole ritual thing on the what, and very, like, basically no emphasis on the why. Like, what they're going to do is something bad to these people. Why specifically they end up doing what they do? Like, yes, we know about the whole nuclear power plant, but it, like, that doesn't explain why they have to, spoilers, kill and embalm a May Queen every year. Like, there's no explanation of the roots of these traditions to make it make any sort of sense. Like, there's no, Howie in The Wicker Man has that scene where he reads exposition to us about the symbolism and purpose between all of these different facets of the May Day festival, where here it's just kind of like, I guess visually they thought it would be cool to have a room full of dead May Queens. Why they do it that way, we don't know. Robin Hardy doesn't know. But by God, it happens.
Are you saying that you don't have like a room full of May Queens at your beck and call?
Well, I do, but I know why I have mine, and those reasons are personal to me and can't be explained.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I think just Dan hit it on the head. The fact that it's not like a secluded island. It's not like, yes, there is the cult element, but it's not like they're super picky, about who they bring in. I mean, obviously they put thought into it here, but there doesn't seem to be like a specific reason as to why it was a set of Texans. Like, there's no, there's nothing that says that, they couldn't go down the road to, whatever village was next door and be like, hey, I have parts, you have parts, let's make a baby.
Exactly.
And you're telling me that this one town is affected by this nuclear waste, but the one down the way isn't, if it's water oriented?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right, because Howie was they explain very explicitly why he specifically was chosen, the willing king-like virgin fool. There's like 5 facets to why he specifically was chosen. And as you just said, we're never given that. And it makes no sense for Steve and Beth.
On that note as well, the rug pulls that are done in this film aren't very good rug pulls, because they're literally just the opposite of what happened in the previous film. So, for example, the Queen of the Maze situation in the original film, Howie suspected that they were murdering the Queen of the May in order to do a blood sacrifice so that the crops would grow back. So in this film, they subvert it by going, no, actually, we are murdering the Queen of the Maze, and we are preserving them in a house for some reason, possibly something to do with fertility. In The Wicker Man, the idea is that if Howie had sex, he would have been safe. They wouldn't have been able to do the sacrifice they wanted to do. So they make the main characters here have sex, but then kill them anyway. And it's just, it's very underwhelming, because it's not a twist on expectation if what they're doing is so blunt and literal against what they did the previous time. It's a bit like somebody doing something ever so slightly different and then expecting you to be like impressed as if like they'd made the Statue of Liberty disappear or something. You're just kind of, well, you didn't change my expectations. You just did the exact opposite of what you did last time without really explaining why that's now okay.
And making it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Delia goes to check on Beth in the morning, only to find that the cat is dead. The milk was intended to put Beth into a deep sleep so that she could be prepped for the May Day festival. Delia asks Lachlan if he truly believes what he claims to believe, and we get a flashback featuring Christopher Lee.
Who looked very sleepy.
Yes.
It's literally like, I swear, just off screen, Robin Hardy was there with like a broomstick, just poking him occasionally. Oh yes, but fruit withered on the bough. Poke. But he was like in his late 90s at that point, so it is to be kind of.
And Christopher Lee, or Robin Hardy, says that this character is Lord Summerisle from The Wicker Man. Christopher Lee disagrees and says that it is not the same character.
I would like to think that it's not Lord Summerisle. I would side with Christopher Lee on that one. And my reasoning was that I thought that it was wonderfully acidic at the end of The Wicker Man for Howie to basically say, next year they'll come for you, Summerisle, basically, and him to kind of smirk it off as if, nah, that'll never happen. I like to think that it may be a year or two, but they did eventually Wicker Man him. So I would prefer it to be maybe, I don't know, a descendant, a relative of Summerisle, some kind of a completely unrelated, some completely random character who just happens to look like Lord Summerisle, rather than it being the actual one. Because my question would be, okay, what did Lord Summerisle get up to between 1975 and like 1998? What was he? Did he discover rave music? Was he? Was he present during, the riots? What was he up to? I want to know.
Yeah, there's that, and having the two main antagonists have the last name Morrison, which is a name that figures very prominently in The Wicker Man. I'm like, what exactly is Robin Hardy trying to... Is he just jingling keys in front of us and being like, oh, Morrison, that's just like The Wicker Man. Or, oh, Christopher Lee, that's just like The Wicker Man. Is he just jingling keys, or is all of this supposed to connect in some way? And if it is, I don't understand how it would.
Here's one other question for you, and I feel like obviously we're not going to have answers, and we've probably given it more thought than Robin Hardy did. But so they knock out Beth, and then eventually, for a variety of reasons, she ends up face down, being slathered with grease. What was she supposed to have shown up where they're burning the wicker tree, or was she supposed to stay under and they do their business, they taxidermy her alive? Is that it? They're taxiderming her alive is traditionally how that worked, right? Is that sort of the way we're supposed to think that this is going?
Yeah, so my impression of it was that the milk was supposed to knock them out long enough for them to get prepared to be embalmed alive. And that the idea was that they would basically, preserve her while she's still alive, technically. Although quite why they would do that, because that seems like it creates a lot more problems if they don't knock her out properly. It would have been probably easier to kill her in her sleep and then embalm her, because it would only take one wrong dosage and suddenly you're encountering the problems that we encounter in this film, which is that she isn't properly knocked.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Starts doing stuff.
And a damn turkey baster of a needle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They realize that the cat drank the milk that was intended for Beth, so they send Beam, the butler, up there with a huge needle, like Triv said. And in the struggle, Beth grabs the broken stem of the milk glass from the floor and stabs Beam under the kilt, right in the genitals.
Ha, joke's on you, I wasn't getting any anyway. I mean, ow.
And then he goes down to the root cellar to have his wounds treated by a woman who works on the estate, and she's like, she nearly severed one of your googlies, but then he just kind of like walks around for the rest of the movie like it didn't happen. I'm like, that's a serious injury.
Yeah.
You know what?
Packing it with alum doesn't help.
You underestimate the strength of the Scottish, I'm afraid.
That is fair. You know what else? The thing that saved him, that and backs up, kind of gives a little bit more armor to the strength of the Scottish, is the Rolling Stone t-shirt with the kilt.
It's a look.
Nice touch.
Oh, yeah. Specific decisions made after a great deal of research. The amount of Scottish balls affected by this movie cannot be understated.
Beth is running through the village in search of a telephone to call for help. She runs into the guy with the raven and breaks into his house. There's a record playing the song The Reluctant Cannibal by Flanders and Swan. Were either of you familiar with this song?
I was familiar with Flanders and Swan, but not the song. They did a song a while ago called Have Some Madeira, Madeira, which is about a guy trying to get a woman to drink more so that she'll be a little bit more susceptible to his charms, shall we say.
Yeah, so
different time, different world.
It's a novelty song. I hadn't heard of it before. But basically since I didn't know that this was like a famous thing, the lyrics are just like, don't eat people. It's wrong to eat people. All I could think of was, do not diddle kids. It's no good diddling kids.
Wouldn't date anybody younger than my daughter. Gotta be big, not a little kid. Yeah, basically. I'd agree with that. It's very similar.
Beam catches Beth before she can make a phone call. He takes her back to the Morrison estate where she is disrobed and coated in olive oil. She's been sedated, but she's still alive. Beam stores Beth in an abattoir for safekeeping, and Steve, as the laddie, successfully makes it to the castle. Beth awakens to find that she's in a room with the previous May Queens. Apparently the May Queen is taxidermied and put in a chair every year. We'll never know why. The villagers catch up to Steve and start stripping nude and singing a hymn that he and Beth taught them earlier. And Lachlan reveals that the laddie is a sacrifice to the sun god and offering in hopes that the sun will make the villagers fertile again. Naked villagers tear Steve apart with their bare hands and eat him.
That was the only part of this whole thing that was actually a bit of a plot twist for me. I was expecting them to do the Wicker Man thing again of dragging him to some kind of wicker tree structure and burning him there. When they actually then just suddenly started eating him, not only did I go, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. My immediate follow-up was, oh my god, they're eating him. And then they're going to eat me. Oh my god. Yeah, and I just, at that point, I'd pretty much lost the will to live with the film, so I was just grateful that there was something I actually wasn't fully expecting, but it wasn't the finest moment of the film, because they also do that weird filtering thing where they slow everything down and blur it, and it just became a bit too high art for my taste.
Yeah. So Beth escapes the manor to find that the villagers are ritualistically dancing around a tree made of wicker. A wicker tree, if you will.
What? Really? How did you come up with that name?
It just came to me.
Wow. That's impressive.
Lachlan is about to set the wicker tree on fire, but instead Beth tackles him into the tree and sets Lachlan on fire. Beth gets the villagers to sing a song for their king and for her laddie. They do, and fuck off into the woods. The wicker tree serves almost no purpose.
Which again feels like a subversion of the first film, where they didn't want you to know about the Wicker Man. That was the whole point, by the way. The original Wicker Man, they didn't want you to know about the Wicker Man. It was only British Lion, when it came to promoting the film, were like, hey, that Wicker Man's really iconic. Let's put it on all the print works and posters, when the idea was that you weren't supposed to know about the Wicker Man until the very, very end of the film. I feel like Robin Hardy was just like, okay, well, people are going to expect someone to get burnt in a wicker tree in this film, I can imagine, so let's make it the least important part of the entire film, and only really mention it in the last 2 minutes, where we don't even show somebody actually properly burn in the wicker tree. We show a couple of seconds of somebody going, I'm on fire, and then it just cut away. And the rest of the film then just carries on as if nothing really happened.
They're doing show, not tell. You know, they're showing the bits of the tree that don't include the burning person because that would require money.
I was just about to say, I think they're showing what the budget could afford, which was not a lot.
Absolutely. The rest of it is up to your imagination.
Oh, great. I love it when I pay for things like that to happen.
Absolutely. See, you get it.
Beth runs away. She immediately meets back up with the villagers in the woods, who descend upon and capture her. Flash forward. Lolly has given birth to a little cowboy. The sacrifice seemingly worked. The film ends on the image of the taxidermied corpse of Beth sitting among the other May Queens. The end. The wicker tree.
And she also had the cowboy hat on while giving birth, which goes to
She
show
did.
you can wear the hat while giving birth, while having sex, while riding, while sleeping, but you cannot have a church or a hat on in church.
That's right.
The only question that I really had at the end of this film was, what is the market going rate for ostentatious May Queen storage facilities in Scotland at this point? But I mean, is it like Pokemon? If you catch a better one, do you chuck one of the older, not so good ones away? Or do you just have to keep all the May Queens preserved?
Yeah.
I think
an
that like
underground
fur
facility?
coats, like if you have an old fur coat, it starts to wither and kind of get all weird and kind of, saggy. So you throw it into like deep storage and you just keep tossing them down there. And then for insurance purposes, you light the whole place on fire eventually.
I like the idea of you suggesting some kind of May Queen death pit where all the preserved May Queens just get tossed in when they're too old and withered from the taxidermy process to be preserved in the ostentatious May Queen storage facility.
If they're more cockroach than they are person at that point, then yeah, absolutely, get rid of it. I don't want cockroaches in my house.
Do you know what? Actually, it just jogged my memory. When that scene, it's a little bit earlier in the film, when Beth is in the ostentatious May Queen storage facility, TM, and she touches one of them and the skin pops off and you see a bit of a skeleton underneath. It reminded me very much of 2006's House of Wax.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And then that whole subplot is very House of Wax as well, come to think of it. Just the idea that they preserve the May Queen for some reason. And yeah, it was just an offshoot. It just occurred to me that I remembered that, it was very... Because there's that actual scene in the 2006 House of Wax where they touch one of the dummies and his flesh comes off.
He's still alive at that point too, I think, because it was Jared Padalecki.
Yeah.
Who's sitting at the piano. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to laugh, and I think it's probably just because you see like too many of those, Gen Z kids don't know how to work like cursive or anything like that. She has issues with a rotary phone.
Yes.
And I just had to laugh.
That was a facepalm moment right there.
I gotta say, though, if this came out in 2011, I am roughly probably the same age as this woman, and I had rotary phones in my house as a child.
Yeah, same. It very much felt like oh crap, yeah, she's going to break into someone's house and they're going to have a telephone. How can we stop her using this telephone from a writing perspective? Just make it old. Just make it old.
So, thoughts, guys, on the Wicker Tree. How did you feel about this movie? Triv, how did you feel seeing this movie for the 5th time?
The scene that chalks up the way that I feel about this movie, having talked it through critically, it comes down to the scene where Beam is trying to find the matching eyes, and he can't find the matching eyes because they were given to somebody else, and he's like, "Oh, it's such an important part of this. Why would you give them to this person?" That was probably a more interesting story than anything that we watched here. It's I did a Letterboxd review of it the first time out I watched it, and I will leave it at this. It feels like there's a lot of interesting ideas that were chucked into a blender, and it came out the other side. You can recognize it if you squint. It's part of the Wicker Man universe, but there's nothing about it specifically that reminds me of Wicker Man or anything that kind of matches that.
Yeah.
I would say, from my own perspective, and this may actually be somewhat of a surprise, if this film had no ties to The Wicker Man, if it wasn't trying to market itself as a Wicker Man sequel, if The Wicker Tree was a different object entirely that was not Wicker produced, if it wasn't trying so hard to be a Wicker Man sequel, I would probably have thought that it was a kind of middle-of-the-road, low-budget British horror film. Definitely something that would be found on page 5 or 6 of Tubi. But
it is on Tubi.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be something that I would have been actively like, this is awful about. I'd have got to the end of it and just gone, well, you know what? It was low budget and they tried. Unfortunately, this has the problem of trying to be a sequel to what I consider to be one of the greatest horror films ever made. And as a result, it's all the more disheartening and all the greater fall, because you have to kind of almost do a comparison to how the original was, because they are so intrinsically tied together. In terms of it being a Wicker Man sequel, I really don't like it. I probably wouldn't watch it again. Had it not had the ties to the Wicker Man, I could have probably seen myself checking it out at least once more. Just because there's a lot going on in the film that I feel like a second watch might help clarify. And there have been a few points that both yourself and Triv have raised through this podcast where I hadn't thought of that until you went, oh yeah, well on the second watching, I noticed this and this made sense because of this point. So yeah, it's a bit of a victim really of its own background. I think had it not been tied to the Wicker Man, I would have enjoyed it more than the fact that it is. Yeah,
I mean, I pretty much agree with both of you. Triv, I agree. There's interesting ideas in this. I think conceptually, like, there is the skeleton of something that could be a good sequel to The Wicker Man. If you are dead set on doing a sequel to The Wicker Man, I think from the outset, like the whole idea of these American evangelical born again virgins going over there is a good basis for a Wicker cinematic universe tale. And I also agree with you, Dan, that I don't think this is a terrible movie. It's just not good enough to merit me ever watching it again. I don't know what possessed Triv to watch it so many times, but
it was on.
She's a braver soul than I.
I'm a glutton for punishment in mediocre folk horror, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't like hating the time that I spent watching this twice. I've seen much worse movies. I've also seen much better and more entertaining films. So it is just kind of like, whatever. I'm not mad that I watched it. In fact, I'm glad that I did, just to put a button on the whole Wicker franchise. I guess I have to go listen to the audio dramatization of the loathsome Lambton Worm. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting as like this legacy sequel that came out almost 40 years after the original. But, you know, you're not missing out on anything if you don't watch this film.
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
It's neither additive nor subtractive to my life.
Yeah. The only thing that we can really take from this is that we now know what Scottish people wear under their kilts.
Shards of glass.
Yes. Or alum.
Yeah.
Yes. At the end of my notes, I just wrote beige, and I think that that's probably the best sort of summary. It's like, it's not bad enough that I'm like, oh my god, you shouldn't watch that. It's a terrible film, piece of crap. It's not good enough, though, that I could ever really endorse it. I just kind of got to the end and went, well, that was a film. The next one will hopefully be better.
Yeah. I think my three main takeaways are: don't wear a cowboy hat in church, don't eat humans, and do not diddle kids. That's what I've learned from the Wicker Tree.
Sound advice.
Yeah. Across the board, good life philosophy, I think.
I took away, do not touch Willie.
So, unless you guys have some other final thoughts on this, I think we've dug deeper into the Wicker Tree than anyone has before. So thank you guys for coming on the show and breathing life into this dead format with me. Tell the fine folks out there where they can find you and anything you've got in the works.
You can find me on YouTube at Trivial Theater. I do actually have stuff upcoming, which is more than I can say that I have put out in the past couple months. You can also find me on Letterboxd at Trivial Theater. I'm also on Instagram, Blue Sky, and I guess Facebook. So
nice.
And thank you once again for having me on board. Always a pleasure. You can find me at TYTD Reviews on YouTube, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd. Currently taking a little bit of a hiatus just to find my groove again. And it's adventures in cinema with people like yourself, Chris, that have really helped to get me back on track. So again, thank you for having me. Hopefully I'll be back soon talking about everything from Vice Academy to Mr. Jolly Lives Next Door.
Wow. Yeah. So on behalf of Dan and Triv, I'm Chris, and this has been another episode of Dead Formats. See you later. On the next episode of Dead Formats, we'll be covering a movie that I really couldn't think of a good way to tease, so we'll be talking about Kevin Smith's NFT movie from 2022, Kilroy Was Here. And we'll be joined by Murph from the weekly podcast Massacre and Rob from Box Office Gross.